We wanted peace, we got war, we mustn't make the same mistake again. I'm sorry, Mr. Galloway?
You said we. Are you an Israeli?
I am, yes.
I don't debate with Israelis. I've been misled. Sorry.
What? Racism? What? Racism?
I don't recognize Israel, and I don't debate with Israelis.
ערב טוב, מר גלווי. אני ישראלי, יש לי אזרחות ישראלית, יש לי דרכון ישראלי. כל המשפחה שלי גרים בארץ, ואתה לא אוהב לדבר עם ישראלים. אתה לא רוצה לדבר עם ישראלים. לא עם ישראלים מהממשלה, אבל עם כל הישראלים. Mr. Galloway.
Don't come any closer to me.
Well, why not? Why not?
Because I'm feeling threatened by you. Don't come any closer to me. What's that up your jumper?
This is an Israeli flag. I'm an Israeli, Mr. Galloway. And you speak with fascists in Beirut. You interview Mr. Ahmadinejad for Press TV.
You're doing yourself a lot of harm here, son.
Yeah. I think you did a lot of harm by not speaking to my friend Elon and having a constructive dialogue with him. And sir, I don't have a question for you, as you can see, because I don't debate with racists. Thank you, sir.
Well, it's funny, the last time I saw that flag was on Saturday. And you can consult innumerable sources on the internet about this. The last time I saw that flag was on Saturday in Bradford, held aloft by the English Defence League. It's there, published in many newspapers, broadcast on many news bulletins, and I think that it's come to something, that England's fascist formation finds the flag of Israel the most appropriate flag to fly.
If I said in a debate that I would not debate with a Pakistani, I would rightly be called a racist. My question for you is, are you a racist?
Why are you applauding that? What kind of people would applaud that? Am I a racist? You've sat through the last hour and a half of me speaking, and you're applauding someone asking me if I'm a racist? What kind of people are you? Or do you just applaud anything? Would you just applaud anything? You made a better job of it than your friend. I'll grant you that. Talking to me in a language I don't understand and then waving an Israeli flag in my face was not, I suspect, the finest moment that he will experience in what I hope is a long life in public affairs. I'll let you in on something you don't know. I'm one of the few people on the left in Britain who traveled the length and breadth of apartheid South Africa as an underground agent of the African National Congress led by Nelson Mandela, then in Pollsmoor prison in Cape Town. Therefore, the subject of apartheid is particularly important to me. The question of racism is particularly important to me. And in parenthesis, let me tell you this, that throughout the entirety of my time underground in South Africa under apartheid, every house I slept in, every dinner I ate, every car I drove in was provided by Jewish activists of the African National Congress. So Jews don't have to be on the side of apartheid. They don't have to be on the side of racism. Jewish heroes amongst my blood brotherhood, like Dennis Goldberg, who served 27 years on Robben Island in Paulsmoor prison, but who never was able to touch Mandela and his comrades because they were on one side of the apartheid prison wall, and he and a few other Jewish heroes of the African National Congress were on the other. Dennis Goldberg, Albie Sachs, Joe Slovo, Ruth First. Perhaps you've heard of these people. If you haven't, look them up. Jews don't have to be on the side of apartheid. They can stand up against it. And I say to those who imagine that they are friends of the state whose flag was just waved in my face, turn away from the racist apartheid ideology of Zionism. Turn back to where Jews were before the emergence and the hegemony of Zionism. The greatest people on the earth were Jews. The leaders of the socialist, communist, trade union, liberal, Enlightenment throughout the 17th, 18th, 19th centuries were great Jews. Marx himself was a Jew. None of them believed that as Jews they should go and take somebody else's country and drive millions of them around the world as refugees. All of them would have turned their back against such an ideology. But because of my experience in South Africa, which included, by the way, being battered and bloodied by a Scottish South African policeman called Campbell. One of the reasons why I hate Alistair Campbell so much. In Gugulethu police station, in the Gugulethu township in Cape Town, although the policeman had eventually to wash my feet in public, in penitence. But that's another story. Because of my time in South Africa, because of the decades that I worked against apartheid in South Africa, do you imagine that I would turn up at a university and debate apartheid with a supporter from South Africa of the apartheid system? I'd rather punch him in the face than debate with him. Why? Because apartheid is a racist poison. It is the worst kind of fascism. And I would never debate with any supporter of South African apartheid. Why should I debate with a supporter of Israeli apartheid?
Your hope for a binational state called Israel-Palestine. But how is this possible when Hamas throw their opposition, Fatah, off the roof, and Mahmoud Abbas siphons off aid for his own resources such as houses and denies the right of the Jews, the historical rights of the Jews to the Western Wall?
Is this really Oxford? Mahmoud Abbas denies the right of the Jews to pray at the Western Wall? What are you talking about, man? Mahmoud Abbas is an American stooge. Why would he deny the right of Jews to pray at the Western Wall? Where did you get that from? What cesspit of false propaganda did you dredge that allegation from? It's totally absurd. There is no Palestinian, none, not Hamas or anybody else, who denies Jews the right to pray at the Western Wall. I don't know if Hamas threw opposition Fatah people off roofs. If they did, then no one will condemn it more than me as a lifelong supporter of Fatah. I have supported Fatah and President Arafat, God rest his soul, all of my life. You seem not to know that. You seem to imagine that I'm here to defend Hamas. I don't even like Hamas. I would never have voted for Hamas. I hope they get voted out at the next Palestinian election. Where do you get this stuff from? The point is that the Palestinian people are the people whose country has disappeared. and it's now called Israel. The Palestinian people are the people living outside in the refugee camps with a right to go back. That's all. Now, my solution is a democratic one. Everyone who's entitled to live there must be allowed to live there. And they must be allowed to live there as equal citizens. One man, one woman, one vote. What conceivably could be wrong with that? You wouldn't wish anything else for anywhere else. So why would you wish it for Palestine to be otherwise? Look, you can go on supporting Israel if you like. You can go on blaming the Palestinians as terrorists if you like, even though they are the victims of the terrorists. But all you'll be doing, I warn you, and you're a young man with more at stake than me, all you'll be doing is continuing to fill the swamp with bitterness and hatred. And a terrible harvest can only come from that.
And 4 out of 5 people in the country want an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. That will have a political expression if it can, and in one sense, George is that expression.
OK, well, we'll let you go, but before we go, do you want to say a quick word of congratulations to George Galloway this morning?
I think we'll leave it there.
From Sven-Göran Eriksson to the Countess of Wessex, a series of celebrities have been duped by a journalist who disguises himself in Arab robes. His newspaper, The News of the World, also says his work has put many criminals behind bars. Now, Mazhar Mahmoud's identity could itself be exposed after a legal victory by George Galloway.
Gorgeous George Galloway, man with no face, but his disguise is all too familiar. The fake sheikh, News of the World undercover reporter Mazhar Mahmoud. But could he have met his match? An MP who recently described himself as a bit of a catch.
I think it was always going to happen that one day somebody, after all these other people got done by the fake sheikh, that somebody would recognise him. And it's just rather sweet that it is George Galloway, because George Galloway is the sort of person who's going to make a lot of hay about it, and indeed has done.
But his style of journalism courts criticism. He's often accused of entrapment. His greatest scoop was exposing an alleged plot to kidnap Victoria Beckham. 5 men were arrested, but the case fell apart after it was revealed that the main witness had been paid by Mahmoud's newspaper. Could the reporter be losing his touch? When he invited George Galloway to a business meeting at the Dorchester Hotel on Park Lane, the MP, who once dressed up as a cat on a reality TV show, immediately smelt a rat. When Mr. Galloway arrived here for his dinner date, he was met by a man wearing Arab costume who claimed to be an Islamist. Yet he didn't have a beard or seem to know much about Islamic practices. The fake sheikh then started to ask Mr. Galloway a number of crude questions about how to fund an MP. The media-savvy Mr. Galloway lodged a complaint with the Speaker of the House of Commons and the Met Police, claiming Mahmoud tried to get him to make anti-Semitic remarks.
This man's not a journalist, he's a provocateur. He sets people up. Some of these criminals that Mr. Ferrari is booming about were actually entrapped in the crimes that they committed by this man. In 1999, I spoke about this in Parliament.
Well, there are 2 issues here. One is the idea of a newspaper going to law anyway against other journalists. But the important part of that is that they used laws that they have themselves tried to overturn. In other words, for example, they wanted the identity of the Bulger murderers known, and they've wanted Mary Bell to be identified.
Yes.
Now they say, oh, no, because they're protected, we should be protected.
Both of those public services, I would say. And we have to realise what Mazhar Mahmoud has done. He is not a criminal. He's, to my knowledge, committed no criminal acts, unless Mr. Galloway can tell otherwise. What's happened is, unfortunately...
Well, what is in fact what he did, which was to try to goad him into making anti-Semitic statements?
John, you're right. It was a clumsy one. They shouldn't have done it. But I don't think it's right.
What's the
Well,
point?
hang on. I don't think it's right that Mazir Mahmoud should be remembered for that. It would be the same as, say, remembering somebody who appeared on a television programme because he dressed in a lurid pink leotard and tried to drink milk out of an actress's hands.
Well,
I'm sure Mr. Galloway wouldn't want to be remembered solely for that.
You'd have cut even less of a dash in a lurid pink leotard than me.
Absolutely. If you want to make it personal, we can.
If I want to make it personal,
Yeah,
listen. He
you've
will be.
decided
He
to
will
go
be.
after.
He will be remembered for this and for other disreputable attempts to entrap people into behaviour that they would not otherwise
They
have.
committed crimes, Mr. Galloway.
Well, I certainly have committed no crimes, but he asked me to. He suggested that he could foreign fund the Respect Party covertly through English people. When I told him this was completely illegal and rightly so, he pressed the point and pressed the point, all the while speaking into a microphone. That's why I've demanded that they publish the text of the conversation. When that failed, he began Holocaust denying, trying to lead me down a road of making anti-Semitic remarks. When that failed, he must have found the bill when it arrived quite a painful one. The Dorchester's not cheap. Now I bring you the dread news that David Ward, my parliamentary colleague from Bradford East, has, after a day of rough treatment, no doubt, categorically apologised for the tweet that he made yesterday. I'm very sorry that he categorically apologised for it. And as I said last night, the synthetic rage of New Labour about what he said, which was, you don't know it, if I was living in Gaza, I'd be tempted to fire rockets too, is identical, almost word for word, to what Cherie Blair said almost a decade ago. Cherie Blair and the Queen of Jordan, having heard the miserable stories that they heard, opined that the wonder is not that some of these people become suicide bombers, the wonder is that more of them don't become suicide bombers. That's actually a stronger statement than David Ward has now been prevailed upon to categorically apologise for. And both Cherie Blair and David Ward were merely speaking the obvious truth. After all, if you were living in Gaza under siege, if your children had been killed, might be killed, if your hovel had been, might be destroyed at any moment, and you could see through the wire the very land which was yours and from which you were driven, because there's another 80% in this story. 80% of the people of Gaza are refugees. They were never born in Gaza. They were driven to Gaza as refugees and are now imprisoned within it, and they can't see many of them. They can't see the village that they left because that's been destroyed and new cities built on top of it. But they can see the land, that which was once theirs and their parents. What would you do if it was you? Would you take up arms against this sea of troubles and try, by opposing, to end them? Or would you what? Walk into the sea and commit suicide? If you did, you'd be shot before you got past shoulder deep. Would you simply lie down fatalistically and accept more than 65 years of this? Or would you fight? Well, some of you may be pacifists. I myself am not. And unlike David Ward, I wouldn't just fire rockets, I'd fight them with my bare hands if I could get my hands on the people responsible for these crimes. Write that down. Somebody will call on me to apologize tomorrow. The one thing you can be sure of, I'll not be apologizing, categorically or otherwise, for it. No, it's okay, go on. No, I'm fasting.